5 years ago to the date, my birthday, I met and interviewed the man, the myth, the legend, Mathieu Cote, in what would be a yearly tradition. And for those of you guys that don't know, Mathieu Cote is pretty much the face of Dead by Daylight. He's currently the game director and head of partnerships, which means he gets you all those big license deals and pretty much calls a lot of the shots. And in case you don't know him from anything else, you might know him from this.
I think we did a pretty good job so far.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy my birthday tradition where I give you guys the gift of interviewing one of the most amazing developers on the team, Mr. Mathieu Cote. If you enjoy, leave a like down below, subscribe for some more awesome Dead by Daylight content, and don't forget next week there's a part 2 of this interview where we ask the burning community questions. Oh yeah, I'm live on Twitch right now for my birthday. Make sure you guys are coming out to the stream, twitch.tv/theking. Alright, enjoy.
Oh, that's good. Is that a hint to the upcoming Jaws chapter?
King, I thought you said we should dress up.
Yeah.
I misunderstood. I thought you said you were going to get dressed up.
How's it going, everybody? Kings and queens, welcome back to the channel. Today we have our annual amazing interview with the man, the myth, the legend, Mathieu Cote. I'm also joined with my best friend Polyester as my co-host. Hello, gentlemen. Thank you guys both for joining me today and spending your afternoon. How are you doing?
Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, King.
Yeah, like
of course.
I said when you asked, I do hope that when I get to be a really old, grizzled gentleman, pleasantly retired, you're still going to call me every year to do this, and then we can talk about, I don't know, gardening or something.
100%.
Brownie recipe, right?
Oh, yeah.
That brownie recipe.
Yeah, I have to make that tomorrow. Because they're better the next day, and on Friday, my wife is having a sleepover with some friends, so I'll make sure they have a big plate of brownies.
Nice. Yeah, I went to Mandarin. I think I sent you a picture. What was it again? I forgot. You said you really love them. Was it macaroons? I don't think it was macaroons. I think it was something. And the last interview, we were like, you just shovel them down, and I was like, all right.
Overrated, but they're like super finicky things to make. And they're not that great. Like, they're good, but...
Really? I like them. I really like them.
Right.
Maybe I'm too basic.
I don't think you're basic. It's fancy stuff, right? Macaroons are super fancy.
Macaroons. Oh, man. Well, on that note, Mathieu, we got a little bit of insight into your life. You're making some brownies. How does your day-to-day go? Because... Polly and I, we asked our community a little bit for some questions to kind of ask you, brainstorm some ideas, but there seems to be a lot of misconceptions on what your role is. From what it seems online, you design the cosmetics, you also balance the game, you also get the licenses, you also nerf Skull Merchant all the time. So what is your role, and what do you do specifically? How does your day-to-day go?
Well, it changed quite a lot in the last few years. Right. So just to go back, because I like to take a pleasant stroll down memory lane. Almost 10 years ago now, like 2015, 2014, we started talking about Dead by Daylight internally. It wasn't called that back then, but I was a producer at Behavior. And so I was the producer when we created Dead by Daylight up until pretty much the launch of the game. Which means, for people who don't know, producer's job is to essentially take the creative director's vision, which is a mess of dreams and ambitions, and then turn it into reality. So you're responsible for scheduling and budgeting and managing people, mostly managing the leads who then manage their own teams. We had about 30 people, so I was the producer on that team. And we shipped the project, and our friends, Starbreeze at the time, who were the publisher for Dead by Daylight originally, told us, you need to have someone to interact with the community. You need to have someone to be the face and voice of the project, the Metatron, if you will, who will be talking to people. And I'm like, I have no idea what I'm getting into. Let's do this. And I volunteered for that. And so I transitioned a little bit, and I gave the keys of the car to Stéphane Beauchamp-Daniel, who was the lead programmer at the time. And I said, man, you run the whole show, just go and have fun. And so I transitioned more into a role where I was more involved with media, I helped immensely build the community management team, which we didn't have one at the time, so I went to hire Not Queen, our friend Gab at the time, a lot of these things. And we built together a PR team, which we didn't have, a marketing team, which we didn't have, and all these things that I sort of did until we had people to do it. And that was the first, let's say, 4 or 5 years of Dead by Daylight, which led me slowly to sort of remove myself from the day-to-day operations of what are we going to do next? Are we patching tomorrow or in a week? Like, these were not my questions anymore.
Right.
Now, the team grew. Today, if we look 10 years down the line, almost 10 years, the team is over 350 people. I don't have the exact number, but it's about 350 people.
It's crazy.
Who spend most of their days on Dead by Daylight. Over that, there's a couple of other people who, touch on the project once in a while. And then my job is mostly nowadays on the partnership side. So my official title is Head of Partnerships. I always forget. No, it's partnerships because there's more than one. I like to say that the most important partnership that we have is with the community and with our players, and therefore it is still a part of my job to take care of that partnership and to be present in some of the streams that we do, and like they take me out of the cupboard and dust me off and on the camera once in a while. I think our friend Eric Pope does a bang-up job of hosting most of these events nowadays. I mean, it's his job as director of the community. But so, yeah, part of that relationship, and then everything else that we do. So relationship with the licensor is probably what takes up most of my time. And that includes all the licenses that we have right now in the game, which is quite a few of them. It's not because it's been released that we don't talk to them. I mean, obviously there's new content to be done. There's renewals on agreements. So a lot of, I had to learn legalese as part of my new job, right? I had to learn to understand how you draft agreements. One of the first things I learned, which is good advice for you youngins out there, contract is awesome, and then you sign it, and then the moment you sign a contract with someone, the word contract becomes a dirty word. Like, if you have to mention the contract in a conversation after you've signed it, it's usually a bad sign, right?
Oh, like it says in the contract.
Yeah, you're already, we're off to a bad start in that conversation. And I thought that was very interesting. But while you're negotiating, it's great, right? It's the objective, it's the thing. And as soon as you sign it, hopefully we never speak of this again. Like, we both understand what we're in, what we're getting out of it, what are the boundaries, and hopefully we don't have to talk about the contract anymore. Which I thought was very interesting. Anyway, that's part of what I do, and then we do the renewals, and then a big part also is working with the team internally to decide which other licenses we would like to pursue. And that means that a lot of my day-to-day has to do with what's going to happen in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years.
Always living in the future.
That's awesome, but it's frustrating because, I work on some really exciting stuff right now that I'm like, I can't tell anybody about this.
We won't tell anyone.
Yeah, we won't tell
Sometimes
anyone.
It just feels good to let it out,
It's true. But also, and Marie-Claude, our PR, head of PR and marketing, and probably many other things now. She wears many hats, but Marie-Claude, you've met her, and one of the first things she taught me was there is no such thing as off the record. It doesn't exist. Whatever, wherever you are, whoever you're talking to, assume that someone's recording it and it'll come out tomorrow on whatever website.
King, are you recording this?
Definitely not. Just friendly conversation, sir.
Sure, but that's it. So that was good advice, and I've managed to not fuck it up much over the years. I think.
It's good.
Yeah,
Gotten better. Yeah, I mean,
first thing that I've got known for, or at least made fun of.
Oh no,
we've done a pretty good job. I mean, okay,
solid record, yeah.
Take it. Yeah.
So do you have like a calendar? I mean, not without going into specifics about
there is
individual licenses. Do you have like a calendar? This one's up for renewal here. This one's up for renewal here. Are the lengths of contracts different from one license to another, perhaps, or is there standard license agreement time?
Yeah, and because we do have a template that we like to use, but if you talk to someone like Disney, for instance, they don't give a shit about your template. Like, no. This is what we use as a licensing contract. I think the legal department of Disney is probably much bigger than behavior as a whole, right?
Right.
Would say,
this is our legal contract. Take a look at it. There's going to be quite a lot of back and forth, red lines, they call it, like when lawyers send each other, like it's the same, but we changed a few words here and there, and we changed a few things, and then you keep going back and forth until everybody agrees on the actual definition of every word that's being used in there. Some of them are super complex. Like I'd say Netflix and Disney are companies that have extremely thorough documentation. And then other licensors that we have are very simple, right? Oftentimes for licensing, especially for movies that date back a little bit, you have people who handle catalogs. So an agent or a group that says, we own all of these properties. Well, we don't own them, but we manage them. So if you want the rights to this, and we can get them for you, and then we will be the go-between between you and the owner, and then you don't have to deal with anything, which is great. But it can often be an extremely simple things. Like we have some of our agreements are like a one-pager, and it's like not even a full page. Like a letter of intent. It's just like a small little blurb saying, this is what we want to do, this is what you're getting out of it, this is what we want, and then people just sign it and they're like, okay, that's fine. Send us the report every so often, and then give us the royalty if there's any royalty in the contract, and then you move on, which is nice. But yeah, they're all different, and it's, for me, it was an education for sure. It's like when I started moving into that direction, it was really cool. And it leads into a lot of other things, because right now behavior, we don't just do Dead by Daylight, right? We still do a lot of work for hire as a company, which means negotiating contracts with people and negotiating agreements, and sometimes we're the client and sometimes we're the provider, and it's all very, it gets really complex in a good way, because it means that if you talk to, I don't know, Universal, right? They might have needs of a game, and at the same time they have a license, and then there's a lot of different things we can do with the same people. And so you build those relationships over now almost a decade. It makes it really interesting. And so it's not like a lot of the conversations that I have with our partners, sometimes they're not even about something specific, like, oh, by the way, the renewal of the contract is up. But it's also about just continuing those relationships, making sure that we talk to each other, making sure that we know where we're at, what is currently on top of your mind, as a company, what it is that you're looking for in the next year that maybe we'll be able to help with. Maybe we can do some sort of a joint event because you have a new movie coming out or whatever, right? So yeah, there's quite a lot of moving parts, even within behavior nowadays, right? There's so many people with behavior, so many people working on this. And I'm one of the strongest proponents for the remote work. Like, I really enjoy it. I have a comfortable little spot built here. I'm happy at home. I don't need to, get some time away from the kids or the wife or something. Like, I'm happy. And I can do most of my job really well remotely because I mostly talk to people who aren't in the office anyway. But I will say that being able to see people face to face has helped because there's so many people, so many departments, people that I need
right
on a day basis. And I also realized that especially for new people like juniors or interns is even more flagrant. Like if you're a junior and it's your first day working at Behavior and you're working from home, it must be incredibly difficult because you're so lost and nobody's there to really guide you.
Yeah.
Remotely and everything. So I think that the biggest bonuses or the biggest benefits from going back to the office, which is happening, by the way, right now. There's been an announcement. Behavior is returning to the office at 2 days a week if employed. Like that. It means that for juniors and interns and people who are sort of starting, the benefits are immense, right? But for that, it's like any buffs from a support role, you need to be in range. That's kind of how it works.
Yeah, I can see that.
So for
you'd feel like almost uncomfortable to be the person who needs to reach out for help all the time.
Yeah.
And
but especially if you're in the office and there's nobody, right? Or if you're just with other juniors and interns, you're like, So as
who's helping you?
Like maybe I don't have as many benefits from being there day to day, and I go, well, yeah, I do go for coffee with some animator that I really like, and we get along and we talk about movies, and it doesn't help the work. It doesn't make me more productive. It's got benefits on the company culture and whatnot. But really the biggest thing that I can see is that it's like the new person that just started, they'll get so much more from being in contact with people directly. So yeah, I don't know how I got to that bit. Doesn't matter. I ramble on, and you have to stop me, or else it's just.
No, it's fun. It's fun conversations. It's insightful because I mean that's what we kind of want. We want to see exactly like what your day to day is and hear these conversations because even for me, like I'm learning new things, right? With like the contracts and people like to hear that aspect.
Yeah, but I guess.
Did you find?
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to ask. Just to follow up, did you find like it was difficult for you to go down the rabbit hole and figure out who owned what when you started looking for partners, or was it pretty easy because you had those established relationships with the company making games?
It helps for 80% of the stuff that we're looking for. Because, and again, it's just the fact that Behavior's been doing this for about 30 years, right? Doing games for other people and working with different licensors and developers means we have contacts. And if there's a new company that just formed. Oh, well, the biz dev guy actually at the company used to be at this other place. He used to be at THQ 10 years ago where we worked with him, right? Like, so you know people, which is another great piece of advice that's going to drop right now that says, don't burn bridges because you never know where you meet people later, right? You never know.
For sure.
And even that kid who was the annoying intern that was just there for 3 weeks and you were rude to, 6 years later you meet them and they're the CEO of that brand new company
of Funko Pop and they never want to work with you.
Why did you do that, Matthew? Funko guy's feelings.
That's the thing, right? They'll remember you. You might not remember them. They will, for sure. But so to answer your question, it helped, but also there's a biz dev team, obviously, at Behavior, a team of people whose job it is to go and expand the business of Behavior. And especially it was mostly used for the work for hire side the longest time, but now I'm sort of more integrated in that team. And these people, that's their expertise. Like, that's not mine. But them, like, there's a couple of them, I'm like, okay, I want to reach out to Nick Cage. How do I get in touch with that guy, right? And they're like, okay, I think I know a dude that works at the place, and they're like, I'll ask. And then you ask it's a lot of networking, right? Business people spend their days traveling and going to all of those events and then talking to all the other business people and going, oh yeah, if you go this and that, and then you start to build that network, and that's sort of your strength. That's how you do what you do. For instance, one of our fucking love him, Stefan Krutzer. He's a German guy that works with us. He's head of biz dev for Europe, I believe, something. But he's a super funny guy. But he comes from the music industry. Like many years ago, he was in the music industry doing pretty much a similar job, which means that he had a bunch of contacts that we didn't have, which was great. And so, for instance, Iron Maiden, Slipknot, these things were easier to reach to. But it's funny because some of them, the way they explain it, they're like, it's like puzzle games, right? It's like a challenge. It's detective work. It's like literally saying, okay, I want to reach this person. Where do I start? And you start to scrub, I don't know, LinkedIn, and you look at,
figure out, connect the dots.
He made a post on Twitter thanking his agent for years of work, and that guy works at, but back then he was working there with, this other guy that I talked to, he's at Warner. Okay, let me reach out, right? And that's the sort of thing that you have to get up to for the first contact in many situations.
It's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon game.
Yeah, literally.
Exactly that. Yeah.
That's a perfect segue to my next question as well. Obviously, you spoke how you get to the point of meeting those licensors and figuring what happens, but how do you actually select, what licensed properties you guys want to work with? How does that all kind of go down? Is it something that you're like, okay, this is something I really want, so we'll keep knocking at the door, or maybe this is a fit right now?
It's a weird and very organic process that has changed many times over the years and that is constantly being looked at. So we're not just changing how we do it, but we're evaluating how we want to change how we do it, because it is critically important. And so we have regular meetings, and these meetings include people from different departments. You have Dave, of course, Dave has to be there. Dave Richard, our amazing creative director. And then you have people from the product department. So that would be Rose Lee, who's in charge of all the catalog, everything you see in the store, and then the DLCs and things like that. And then her boss and the other product people. Product people tend to, their discipline is to, how do we make money out of this, essentially? So market research, sales tactics to a certain extent. What is viable? What is not? How do we, all the ways to present products to have people buy them or not, or adding value, what has value, what's value, things like that. And then we have brand people, so that's Pascal Leroux and a couple of others. I don't know if I should be naming people. Mostly I just want to name them because I like them and I think they're doing a bang-up job, but some people don't like to be named. So
the angry people on Twitter searching their names
they're looking up right now.
So then we have the brand department, which are usually tied closer to the marketing people. And so brand is like, how is this going to affect us? Like how people perceive Dead by Daylight, right? Does it fit well with the world we're trying to build? Also, does it fit well with what we're doing with, I don't know, the comic or the board game or some others that I'd be doing? And we want to make sure that all of it meshes together to
works well, right?
A brand perception, right? If how people perceive us and how people think of Dead by Daylight. So there's a couple of different departments that get together, and then we talk about what we would like. And usually we bring in long lists that are taken from either like popular culture or anybody who's got an idea. We add it to the list, and then new stuff that comes out. And then all of a sudden we go, oh, music is a thing now. We've done Iron Maiden. So, okay, let's add bands and see if any of them make sense. And we tend to go through all of these lists and talk about it. And then there's columns where like brand will say no, and then product will say yes. And we go, okay, so let's hash it out. Let's see why you think it's why you think it's not. So yeah, there's a lot of personal opinions that go into that. But on top of that, you have that layer, which is the CSAT surveys and all the surveys that we send out. We just sent a big one out a little while ago.
And there were like 75 license options on
this. There's so many.
And obviously, if we only put 4, it would be a little bit of a dead giveaway, right?
Right.
We have to put some weird.
So wait a minute. Are you saying something on that survey?
At some point in time, it's coming.
At least one of these names was seriously considered.
Justin Long.
Maybe we hid one in there that makes sense.
Jaws.
Point, right? And sometimes we'll say, oh, this one is way too obvious. So let's take one that is very close to, that reminds people of, and see if that's
interesting. Interesting.
Because we have to be careful also, right? Because of people like you, Paulie, mostly.
Yeah, I was about to say that man right there. You gotta be careful of him. Good old detective.
To this day, the tinfoil hat videos you make are some of my favorite content.
Mm-hmm.
It still makes me incredibly happy to just listen to you and go, oh.
I appreciate that. I mean, I had some people recently said they've missed the tinfoil content, but sometimes it becomes difficult to make tinfoil content when other people get in the way.
I know.
So what can you do?
Go
I got a new one
videos
coming out in a couple days. I'll send you the link.
Okay, but that's it. So to answer the question, it's a really complex process. It involves a lot of people, and it's not completely like data driven. It's not just that. There's quite a lot of data that goes into it, and we try to be clever about it. But it's also a lot of gut feeling, right? And especially when, like, I keep bringing up Nick Cage because fucking awesome. But like, when we started talking about it, we had nothing else to compare it to, right? It was just us going, we think it's a cool idea. Let's try it. And once in a while, I'm glad that we still have that, even though the not just the like. Dead by Daylight is now gigantic with 350 people.
Yep.
Obviously, things become a little more, not necessarily bureaucratic, but there's a little more red tape. There's a little more of established processes as opposed to the early days, right? But we still give ourselves the opportunity to try crazy things. Hooked on You is also a good example, right?
Yep.
The fact that we had that idea and then we ended up doing it is testament to the fact that we still allow ourselves to have stupid ideas and say, oh no, but it'd be fun though, and then we do it, and then it's fun. So really,
is that considered a success?
Depends who you ask.
Okay,
really, I think so. Personally,
I think so.
The ambitions that I had with it, and that's how I originally presented it to a few people. Was and I'm not claiming that I'm the one who came up with the idea, but once I was on board, the way I presented it was more of a marketing project, right? So the objective there was not to make a ton of money. It didn't cost us that much anyway in the grand scheme of things, but it didn't bring in revenue that really make a big dent in the revenue of Dead by Daylight. Like, that's not the point. The point was every single journalist out there wrote about it. Like, you couldn't not talk about it when we announced. It made a lot of people super happy. It created a ton of really cool content. So fan fiction, cosplayers, people who do fan art. Like, it was great juice for all of these people, right? So for me, that was a huge success.
There's still people waiting for the additional killer cosmetics from those
more
looks
skins in
Hooked on You.
I know.
Want the trapper in the swimsuit.
Yeah.
Maybe soon. Soon, TM.
That you want that, Paulie, but I can't give it.
No, not me. I'm just saying for other people.
Some guy I know.
I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah.
Literally.
So, like, you're talking about your gut feeling on this. So, a lot of people ask me, do you think we could ever get this license, which I consider niche, this license, that license, the niche licenses? And my response has always been that there's some kind of a level that if behavior doesn't feel like it has enough recognizability, you would just rather make an original chapter of your own rather than reaching for a niche. That's always been my thought on it. but there's not like an actual.
It's not black and white, right? And that's the thing. I think that one of the things that changed, at least this year, is I think we regained, at least internally, we regained confidence in our capacity to make awesome original content.
Yeah.
Because we had a rough couple of releases at some point. We're like, there's something missing. And then I think the All Things Wicked, we're like, oh shit, okay, no. We were mislaid for a second there, or we tried some stuff that didn't work as well, but okay, we got this. Like, hold my beer, it's happening right now. And so that makes it harder for us to accept a license that's just like, it's all right, but like if we put it side by side with an original where we have absolute liberty on what it is that we're going to create, how we're going to do it, the different elements or deep lore that we can put in it, like this has extreme value. Also, I mean, non-negligible is the fact that we don't pay royalties, obviously, on original content. So for a license to be at least financially viable, it has to be at least bigger than what we pay in royalties and plus, right? Or else we might as well do an original, because doing a license is more work, period. Just the fact that we have to follow someone else's guidelines, get their approval,
right,
work within a different set of constraints, it is more work, period. So all of these things really add up to more difficult decisions on that front. That being said, I could see a world where we do a package of cult movie, right? I think that nowadays it's probably something that would make more sense. Like, instead of doing, I don't know, pick one, like the Critters, right? Or something. Maybe do a bunch of them at the same time and do like Chubs or whatever they're called. I don't remember. But like, there's so many of the smaller ones that would work well as a package.
Rubber.
That might be more possible. I think Chuds. Is that it? No, this one is the Critter.
Yeah, that's a Critter.
but there's so many of those, right? That are really interesting. They're really cool, but they're well, first of all, they're really cool for old people like you and me, Paulie.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I'm just like, let's just smile.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess that's the answer.
I gotta be honest with you. Like, when I, heard Chucky's coming, Aliens coming, I'm like, we're living in the best times. And then the only metric that I have is the Steam charts, and I didn't really see a bump, and I was like, what the heck? So, I don't know how that is talked about internally, but that kind of gave me pause that, maybe I'm the old guy and this isn't the thing that's turning everybody's gears anymore. I don't know.
I honestly, that's Coop. Say hi.
Hi, Coop.
Okay.
Detective Coop.
Yeah, and I'm happy that this is not a question that people ask me internally. Like, what moves the needle? How are we going to react to this? Like, what's the important bit about a license? Like, we have product people mostly, so there's a big team of people who look at that, the market trends, different games, what are they doing, what works, what doesn't work, what's important? Like, is it the new users? Is it the people returning? Is it the average ones? Is it the people that are super hardcore? Like, it can be viewed in so many different ways, and there are experts doing this, which I'm not one of them. So yes, I look at it with the same sort of puzzled interest that you have, Paulie. Maybe with a little more background information, maybe a little more context for a few of these numbers, and definitely access to a few more data. But in the end, it's not me making those calls and doing this. That being said, we do see that there is an interest in some licenses, and that's, I have a problem with that, and I don't have a problem with people having an interest, but I have a problem with the fact that the things that I find super exciting are not the same as who I think is our average player. But then again, that's a huge lie, because there is no average player. I've said it many times, but when people talk about the Dead by Daylight community, what they have in their head is usually their community, right? Which is you interact with 100, 1,000, 5,000 people. That's your group. That's the people, the content creators. That's the sort of content that you see. That's the boards that you visit. That's the subreddit. It doesn't matter, right? But if you pick another player, what they think of as the community is something completely different.
Completely different, yeah.
Brazil, and they get their news from somewhere else, and the people that they watch is something else, and the killers that they think is cool is got nothing to do with the way you talk about things. And there are thousands of these 1,000 people communities throughout the Dead by Daylight community, or what we call that, right? If you go to Japan, if you go to Ukraine, if you go
completely different, yeah.
Germany, it doesn't matter. Like, everybody has their, like, by geography quite a lot, but also by, I don't know, age range, right? Like, people who are 18 today that remember their parents playing 8 years ago and now are playing the game. Like, people have such completely different perspective on what it is that Dead by Daylight means. So it's always very, very tricky when people say the Dead by Daylight community, because it's usually their Dead by Daylight community. Very valid, but you have to see it in that way, I think.
That's an extremely fair point. I mean, even in conversations that we have, some sort of it boiling down can be killer orientated, survivor orientated. Then you got your different groups that saying the best chapter should be Jason, the next chapter should be FNAF. So they're 100% right in that regard. What I want to know, though, which I've always kind of been curious, who or do you ever get the firsthand experience? Let's say you guys are saying, okay, Chucky's coming into the game. Chucky is the next chapter. We all agree on it. Who breaks that down to everybody at behavior, and then the reactions that people get, especially with the chapters that are one of the ones that you guys really wanted for a long time and you finally did it. Like, who breaks that news? You see these reactions. How does that go? Because you've been busy this year. I mean, Chucky, Stranger Things Return, D&D, Castlevania.
It's tough because that also changed throughout the different years, right? For a while, let's say the first 4 or 5 years, it was usually like we had regular meetings. It was still manageable. Like, the team was still 100 people, let's say. We could get together in a room and talk about what's going to happen in the next 3 months. Like, we'd get together every quarter or something and then talk about the big things and then announce it to people. And it was just exciting. And sometimes, like Halloween, first thing I ever signed for Dead by Daylight, probably just me, like, hang up the phone, running to everybody, going, "Oh my God, everybody, we're having Halloween!" Like, that's probably how it happened. And now, the last 2-3 years, we changed a little bit, and we were really trying to crack down on leaks, right? Because there's been a few, and it's
no,
honestly, it's the worst.
It is.
Like, so many people spend so much time trying to come up with really interesting ways to bring the surprise and get people excited. Some asshole somewhere decides to get a little bit of that thrill because they know something and just fucking spews it out and fucks everybody over in their team. Because a lot of those things were internal. We know that, right? And that's
rat bastards.
That's just fucking garbage people. And don't get me wrong, I get it, right? The first year of Dead by Daylight, when I was on Twitter, on the official Dead by Daylight Twitter, and there was 20 of us talking, and then some streamer would say, "Oh, your game is awesome," and I go, "Yeah," and like, I wanted to, and sometimes I tell things, and then people are like, "Oh my God, that's so awesome," and the thrill of knowing something that others don't, and being the official bearer of news, I get it. It has an appeal. I never hurt anybody. We didn't have a PR team or a marketing team working on teaser and trailers months in advance. Like, we didn't have that. So I didn't fuck anybody over. But the people who leak internally, I really want to, I want to do terrible things to them. terrible.
Like put Legos down and make them walk across the room. That's what you mean, right? Nothing violent, right?
It's Lego. It's never Legos.
Sorry,
Lego bricks.
Gotcha. Put Lego bricks down.
But yeah, no, and even Lego's too good for them.
Yeah, I completely get it. Like the story that y'all told on social media with the release of The Unknown, that was like a masterclass.
Wasn't it
beautiful?
If you would have somebody come in and just spoil all of that, it's just so,
and even for you,
deflating.
It ruins the experience.
Oh yeah,
100%.
What it does for the people working on it and the dev team, but you're absolutely correct. Even for you, it's fucking the experience.
Even not as a content creator, just an average
as
person
a fan,
watching the story comes out in dribs and drabs, like, oh, where are they going with this? Like
that one
we're creating mystery. Remember that?
Yeah.
We're creating mystery. Where's the mystery gone?
I don't know. It's like an old marriage, right?
Yeah.
Comfortable now.
That's like I think back to like even the artists, and it was so good, everything, and it was kind of like everything was leaked, so we know what it's leading up to. And it's like, fuck, like this is so good. That's what I tell people. I feel like anytime there's internal leaks, it's just so shitty. Nobody likes it, and then you're kind of, as like content creators, like me, everybody's talking about it to the point where you gotta kind of address the elephant in the room, and it sucks. It sucks, and that's why I try to avoid anything that's internal for as long as I possibly can. Like, I presume to an extent when there's something in the game files, you guys have learned throughout the years what to put, what not to put. So those are a little bit different.
We don't have a choice. Like,
right.
We could just make all of it completely penetrable. It's just not possible, right? So you have to be able to work in it and understand
100%.
what the hell you're talking about. But
the other ones are just
obfuscate a lot more than we used to, let's say. Yeah. But to answer your question, nowadays we mostly just tell people during like we have regular team meetings where everybody's present. It's really cool to showcase. As far as the internal team, the people working on stuff, usually, and Dave does, of course, an amazing job, but he tends to do like, okay, we're starting work on this chapter now, which is usually not the next one, but the next one after that you'll see, right? And they go, okay, we're starting work on this. Let me present it to you. And he does a little presentation and talks about what the killer's going to be, what the survivor's going to be.
Nice.
How the powers and things are at least meant to be on paper, which oftentimes ends up different from the end result, but not that much, right? We now know enough about the game to be able to create things without getting it too far wrong.
Fair enough. I was super curious about that, so thank you. Yeah, I always wanted to figure out, like, if you're just working, you're coding, you're, let's say, even like on the cosmetic team, I'm sure they're happy, and then they're like, boom, Myers is joining the FOG, and you're like, holy shit, I've been waiting for this. It must be such a surreal feeling.
That were really big. At Stranger Things was a really big announcement. It was really meaningful at the time. I think the FNAF collaboration also caught a few people by surprise.
Caught me by surprise. We were. I was ready to go fishing that day.
I am fully on board with y'all taking control of your own narrative and not let these leakers have any power. For me, I would just be
Agreed.
Like, we're going to hamstring them and just do long, far off in the distance announcements. Like, for example, maybe this past Friday the 13th, you could have announced that, you were getting Friday the 13th in whatever time frame. But anyway, so how you did the, pardon me?
You announced it?
No,
Yes.
no, I'm saying you could have.
No, they did. So tell us about it.
So, for example, so the way that you announced the FNAF on summer 2025, I am fully on board with these long-term announcements, because then you cut the leakers off at the knees. You're out there, you're in control of your own communication, and I think that's the way to go. But one thing that we probably would like to see if you could possibly clear up, there's been a lot of speculation in the community over whether or not
Quite a lot.
Five Nights at Freddy's collaboration next summer is merely going to be a set of cosmetics skins for existing characters, or would it be its own chapter with unique characters? I don't know if you could tell us any of that or not.
What do you think, Polly?
I think it's a chapter.
At these kind of things.
My gut feeling is telling me, my sizable gut is telling me it's a full chapter.
Okay. What do you think, King?
I agree. I think it could almost be a disservice to the fans if it was just cosmetics and announcing it so early. I think 100% it's a full chapter. I don't know if there's going to be a map. I don't know how those things work, because sometimes we don't get those maps, but I think there's quite a lot of upside, so it'd be a full chapter.
Well, I could see like a combo, like Foxy as the Blight as well. That kind of a thing. A
Legendary
skin for the
skins.
Blight. That kind of a thing, like you did with William Birkin for Resident Evil on the Blight. But my feeling is that if you were to make an announcement this early, it's probably going to be a full chapter.
Well, thank you both very much for answering this difficult question. I could possibly answer for you.
All right. Fair enough. Yeah, there are tons of FNAF questions. Like, everyone's like, please, FNAF, we need to know. And I'm like, I don't think he's going to say anything. But, I mean, getting FNAF as a whole is amazing. The community has been, wanting this for such a long time. And I mean, you guys seen the Twitter engagements. I congratulated you. I was like, holy shit. I've been congratulating you all year, man.
For a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. They've been one, and I'm sure you guys see the set. It's crazy to me still to think that, like, even just a tweet, as simple as it was saying you guys are working, is I think it is the most liked tweet you guys have ever had.
Every record.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And for a game that's like 8 years now, it's insane to think about. And looking forward to it. I really am looking forward to it. And I'm sure on the development team, that must feel amazing too.
It's a big one.
I remember Bucket saying she wanted it like way back when y'all used to do the weekly dev streams.
Yeah.
I miss those weekly dev streams. They were so fun.
I've had to rewatch a couple of them lately, and there were some fun times.
Some good old times.
I liked the very, very first one we did. We were so ill prepared, and Dawn at the time, who was he's still IT, but he was helping us with that. He's like, "Oh, you guys want a background? Like the wall?" And they're like, "No, it's a green screen. You can put a background." I'm like, "Oh, let's just put a big piece of cheese," and that's what we had, a large piece of cheese, and that was our background, and it was awesome. It goes back again to like what I was saying earlier. We just do stupid shit because we thought it was fun, and then nobody stopped us, and that was kind of awesome. That's how you get the jar of salty lips.
Yep. Good old jar of salty lips.
Which I haven't forgotten, but when you play the board game, that's the first player token that you pass.
Yeah, we played the board game, Polly, right? We did.
Yeah.
I thought it was
fun.
really well done.
I've played it a couple times.
People, 4 at least, but 5 people is great, and it's just and it's funny because my friends, they don't play Dead by Daylight, and funny enough, they played Casting of Frank Stone, but they don't play Dead by Daylight, and they still get a kick out of playing the game. So, and they're like, we don't know any of those characters. I'll take this guy. He looks fun. I'm like, that's Jake. I know everything about that man. Like, weird. Like, I just like the look. I like the little scarf. I'm like, yeah, okay, sure.
Just a scarf.
So Scarf Guy's gonna move into this room.
Yeah. Like, no, that's just the room. That's the basement. Jeez. Anyway.
Oh man, you mentioned,
and it was fun.
oh yeah, you do really like the Hag. I remember that. You know what? I did a stream today, and everybody wants to know: do you still come around to playing DBD? Do you still have time in your day to play?
I don't play as much. No. I play the board game more, but no, I don't play the game as much. I think
I figured.
Got an overdose for a bit, which I think you might very well be able to relate to.
Yeah. I've been
probably played the game more than I have, honestly, because I mean,
Paulie has our time together doubled. Like,
have you played every killer?
Yes.
It's good to know. Even Skull Merchant?
Not every survivor.
Huh.
First of all, there's too many, and I don't play Survivor very often, so.
Same. Man. We've mentioned Frank Stone, which is also a good segue, because I feel like we had a few questions about it, but I played Frank Stone. I enjoyed it. I love Supermassive games. Just to see DBD and Supermassive have a collab, amazing.
Yeah.
Super happy it came out, and all the little Easter eggs and references. I think Paulie even has some cool questions about some of the references in the game, but one question I want to know, because you are, the licensing guy, if Frank Stone, let's say, were to come into the game, I'm not going to spoil anything in Frank Stone, but let's say it were to come in, would that be considered a licensed chapter, or would that be an original chapter? How would that be evaluated?
That's a very good question. I think the only relevant part of that question is we wouldn't be paying royalties because it's our intellectual property. So
okay,
we own the property, right? It's ours. In this case, Supermassive, where the provider, we were the client, and that's how that relationship goes.
Got it.
It's our intellectual property. Now, that being said, as far as the group talking about, for instance, when we talk about licenses, one of the things that is extremely important also is how many licenses is too many licenses, right?
You've been busy.
A frequent question. And then we say, we'll keep the sort of the overall idea has always been like two, like 50-50, right? 2 originals and 2 licensed chapters a year is the top. Like if it happened, we would do 3 originals and a license, that's fine, but we don't want to do 3 licensed and depending on how years, there's some bits where we had too many and it doesn't matter. The average is about 50-50, right? Would that one be considered an original or not for that specific question? I don't know. And that's a very good question that we've asked ourselves, and I don't think we've come to an agreement within the group. Is it considered an original chapter? Yes, for many reasons, and then no, for many other reasons, right? It's an existing other property that exists. We might own it, but it's still a different property. It's the same universe, but it's a different property. So it's an interesting question. So there is no simple answer to your question, but it is a very interesting one that we asked ourselves, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought about it for a bit too, and I wouldn't know. I guess I would say it would be licensed just because there is some sort of separation. But again, like you said, it is your own property, so it's a weird one.
Not just the fact that it's our own property, because you could argue that Naughty Bear, well, there's no arguing. Naughty Bear is our own property, but it is clearly a license that was brought into Dead by Daylight, even though
that is true.
It's a license owned by Behavior. In this case, it's a lot clearer cut, right? Because Frank Stone exists in the Dead by Daylight universe already. That's the difference. But it doesn't fix or answer the question, really.
Fair enough.
Audio Rivera for Survivor, please.
Oh, man.
Making a note in my little...
Yeah, get your notes.
Get your notebook out. Let's see what we got. Man, you have been busy this year, though. I mean, we have seen... Well, not even this year, because it was last year or the year or whatever that time frame is. I mean, I always like going back, rewatching the interviews that we do, knowing what we know. And it's like 2 years ago, we asked you about Chucky, for example, and you're like, I don't know, it's kind of silly. We asked you literally in October, hey, like, Chucky, the community really wants it. You're like, Are we slaves to the community? In a way, yes, but also we got to use our own intentions. 1 month later, Chucky, boom, in the game. Oh, man.
I never lied to you guys, though. I never lied.
That is true.
I sidestep, I tippy-toe around things, but I will not lie to you guys.
You won't. Is Jason coming as the next March killer?
Jeez, what are you doing?
Hey, he said you're never gonna lie. I need to know. I gotta try.
Something that I've repeated many times over the years, which is that the day he's ready to come to Dead by Daylight, the door is wide open.
Well, he seems like he's getting closer to the door because,
walking along.
I'm sure you're no stranger to this Jason Universe announcement and seeing him pop up in multiverses and stuff.
Really? No, yes, I'm very familiar with these kind of things. Yes, I understand the situation, and I understand why you would think that it would be more likely now. Yeah.
Seems more likely.
Yeah, you're correct.
If you were to bring Jason to Dead by Daylight, would you want him to be more than merely a skin for the Trapper?
Very much so.
Fair.
And again, as we established earlier in this whole conversation, this is my personal opinion in this case because I'm not part of that decision process. But I do believe that Jason, because of his status as a horror icon, he deserves a treatment. Also, he's not just a guy with a machete, right? He does really interesting things, and I think that if you look at one of my favorite examples of Dave's absolute mastery of game design as a tool to paint pictures, if you look at how he created a Michael Myers that is not just a guy with a knife, right? Power, the way his power builds, the way you end up interacting with Michael Myers in the game really builds tension in a way that is unique, but it is extremely nicely representative of the original nightmare that is this character. And I think that it would be silly to believe that the team who put this together wouldn't do something similar if we were to bring in someone like Jason.
I don't think we can ask for any more than that.
Literally.
We gotta watch all the Friday the 13th movies this week.
I know. Boot them all up.
There are worse things you could do during your weekend.
So I mentioned a little bit about the next upcoming March chapter. Obviously, there's a lot of questions just saying, ask him what it is. Obviously, you can't say. But we can sidestep as well. We can ask some questions here and there. Obviously, one of the big takeaways with this one is that there's no map. There's also no survivor with this one. I just want to kind of talk about when chapters are kind of formulated like that. A lot of the people in the community are curious to know why that happens. And I think, Polly and I kind of know a little bit more, but you would know the most of all of us. So why does something like that end up happening?
Of all three of us, yes. I'm not the person who knows the most on this one for sure. But okay. Things are not as simple as they used to be in how we create content in Dead by Daylight, because of the store, because of the fact that like the quality of some of the legendary outfits, for instance, that we've done means that the amount of work that goes into them as opposed to, let's say, a brand new survivor. Like to us, it's about how much value we bring to the game, how best do we represent things in the game, right? Do they need to be a survivor? Do they need to be a killer? And dissociating the killer from the survivor in many instances allowed us freedom in how we presented things. I think the first time we did that was Leatherface, right? Survivor, we felt it was the right thing to do. And nowadays we've done that a little more frequently to like add a survivor mid chapter in between two chapters, do things like that. And it allows us a little more flexibility. So we've been using that a little more often now. And especially because when we do a chapter, whether we want to or not, they tend to be related or have some common points. And in the past, it's not always been done extremely well. Like the Hag and Ace came out at the same time. Their stories don't really interact much. Like there's a couple of bits and bobs, but it's really not. Even The Last Breath with Nia and the nurse, like not all of these chapters felt like a chapter in the narrative sense.
Right.
So breaking them, it means that on that front it makes more sense sometimes, but also it means more regular reasons to scream at players to say, hey, pay attention, we have new stuff coming out, which can also be great. As far as the maps go, maps are awesome, but the value added decreases with every map that we release. Because if there's a map that you really like, or if we release a brand new map and it's absolutely fucking awesome, it means it's one of 75 now, so you're gonna see less of it. Because there's so many more maps, right? And because you don't have direct power over what map you're gonna be in, it means that your favorites are gonna be less and less frequently seen. So there's a really weird thing there. Still, bringing new maps is really, really cool. Like, it's a great way to refresh the gameplay, give you new environments to run into, showcase some awesome landmarks and buildings and things, adding a lot of Easter eggs. And like the map for Silent Hill, for instance, was so full of little details and things. But again, we have to weigh that against the fact that it does add less value because there's so many of them, and we sort of like, oh, should we remove a bunch then, just throw them out? And it makes very little sense to do that. And how pissed would people be if we remove their favorite maps?
Truth.
So we're not gonna stop doing maps, that's for sure. But you're probably not gonna see as many maps being created as it was in the early days, where we created a team and then made 3 maps in it, and then another team and then 3 maps in it. Like, we're a lot more, not cautious, but like, just, we understand that it really needs to have a good reason and be awesome for it to be worth putting in. Because even an awesome map, it still means that whatever map you like, you'll see less often, which is a problem that I don't know how to solve. Some other people are looking at it. Fortunately, it's not me. But you know what I'm saying.
Fair enough.
It's
The probability goes down with the more maps added.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. That's a reasonable answer. I personally always thought, like, at least for me, like, let's say you were getting like the Pinhead license, for example. Maybe that license holder doesn't own all the rights to everything, so you're only available to bring in one portion of something, and you kind of just gotta take it at face value. That's what I always tell people.
Sure, but I'd say that's a very, very edge case, in the sense that it's very rare that you have a property where you'd need 2 things, right? On one side, you need to have a really iconic location that is not tied to the main property. And then you'd need to have a licensor that doesn't own the whole thing. And you need both of those things. And that's not the case. Like, if you had, let's say, Aliens, but you didn't have the Nostromo. I guess that could be possible if we got the license from someone who owns just one part, right? Like, it wasn't in the first movie, it was in the second movie, and you're like, oh, we only have the rights to the first movie, so we don't have access to that map. Could we do it with a different ship? Could we do it without it? Like,
it's pretty rare.
Most of the time, the people who own things own the whole thing. There's exceptions, but then again, when there's a very, very iconic location, which is also not the case with everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Chucky, some people wanted the toy factory, but it wasn't like, the only location that we ever see and everything Chucky.
Top of mind, right? It's not the first thing you think of when you think of Chucky. It's just
Mm-hmm.
a thing. Right?
Yeah, I like to answer those questions too, because you guys know me, I'm not as cultured. I don't know so much about those horror icons, so I'm always like, if I had to think about it.
Even if you take something like Stranger Things, which I hope you're a little bit more familiar with.
Yes, very familiar.
So if you watch Stranger Things, there's a couple of places like, obviously the Hawkins Institute, but even the house, the mom's house. There's a couple of places. But the most important bit was the upside down effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could have been any location, as long as we got that. But I think it was critical that we did get some of that, because the location is really important to the whole IP.
Fair enough.
I always thought it was because maps are a lot of work and that you could only do like 2 maps a year. And so you had
expensive.
Which chapters were going to get licenses which chapters were going to get maps.
They are extremely expensive to make. Also, they're free for everybody. Like, we make no money on maps.
Right.
They generate revenue sort of by roundabout ways. Like, if people come back to the game because of the map or because of this new map, all of a sudden the people are playing more or whatever, or they change their outfits because of the new map and the lighting. I don't know. But all of these, like, they sound silly right now. Like, nobody's saying, like, obviously you make a new map, you're gonna make a shit ton of money. Like, the financial
doesn't work that way.
Besides the question in this case. So it's
not a measurable value add to make a music studio, Trickster, Seoul.
That's it.
South Korea map.
That's it. There is value, but it's certainly not a financial value, or not a purely financial value. It's direct financial value. There is value, though. But even the value itself, as I said, goes down the more maps we create. So it's a tough one. But they're cool. And also, they are increasingly more expensive to make than the previous, for a couple of reasons. First of all, the amount of details, just graphic-wise, the resolution of textures from 10 years ago, things have changed drastically, the way we create things.
Right.
The expectations of people also. But on top of that, like, if you look at the early Macmillan Estate, for instance, the early maps, they were meant to be sort of empty and kind of devoid of specifics, right? It was meant to be just the idea of a place, much more than the place itself. It's a house, there's no furniture in it, there's no nothing. It felt like one of those luminal places. Like, it's just a place that feels off for some reason, because it's not complete, because it's just a dream. That idea also was changed over the years.
Right.
I think that one of the big turning points was probably the Red Forest, right? The first time that we started putting a lot of narrative in there, and you saw that she grew up, she was kept as chill as a child, right? And then from that moment on, we really pushed, and then the Silent Hill map, like I was saying earlier, is so chock full of little details and
crazy details.
At the gas station at the Ding, and people were losing their fucking minds.
I remember that. Yeah.
Nowadays, the expectations on a map were
super high,
and how much there is to discover in there, and like the Dungeons and Dragons map is a good example. Like, there's so much in there. It's so alive and interactive and exciting. So
is there an Easter egg with Vecna's spellbook?
I'm sorry, you cut off, Fred. I don't know what you were doing.
Here we go.
See, now but for comedic purposes,
I will accept that. All right, King, what do you got next?
Yeah, just one follow-up on that March chapter.
our Dungeons and Dragons group, which I've been
I was going to say.
I'm a forever DM in my group for the last 45 years. I started early. But the last few months, Gaetano, who's actually a behavior employee, he's not on Dead by Daylight, but he's a great guy. He's the DM for this one. He's like, oh no, I'll give it a shot. And we're playing the Eve of what's it called? The Eve of Destruction or something? The new Vecna adventure. And it's super fun.
Yeah, I had a few questions about that because I know you guys love D&D, and just to kind of get a chapter like that, surreal.
Oh yeah, for me it blew my mind. It was awesome. Being able to talk to the people at Wizard of the Coast and everything. And it spent so much money on vegan stuff, and it just really cranked up my passion for the game. It's such. It's one of those things, like we've been playing actively. Well, I started really early and then we stopped for a bit. And then for the last 10 years, let's say, we've started playing very regularly again. And I have a group and we play every Tuesday. And unfortunately, my wife actually is way into it now. She discovered it about, like 7 years ago when we started playing again. And she's way into it now. But it's such a magical thing, that you can share with people, because it's really just about, it's an excuse. Like we tried it remotely, and for some people it works, but mostly it's just an excuse to spend time with your friends, and make up stories and make each other laugh and make each other feel things and just have amazing adventures in a way that's not possible in any other. It's just awesome. And there is no limit to the stories. There's none. Like you can tell any kind of crazy.
Any story, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's why when I saw it, I was like, yeah, you probably over the moon with this chapter. And that's what I was saying. I've been congratulating you like all year. You've been on a roll. And that's what I mean. Like, even you're probably still on a roll, because last year you probably already knew all these things are happening. One follow-up with the March chapter, if you even remember which one it was, because you're doing a lot of things.
Next March, talking about?
Yeah, next March. Individual license, tiptoeing around as we do. A little two-parter here. How excited are you personally for this chapter to come into the game? As in your personal opinion, obviously, every license is something you'd be excited for, but personally, does it relate to you a lot? Is it something you've been looking forward to, like on a scale from 1 to 10? Or is this something that it's more for the community, it's more that everyone's happy about?
Which one are you talking
walking
about
around
now?
We're talking about the one in March. This one, March of 2025, and it is a standalone. It is a killer by itself.
Oh yeah.
No map, no survivor.
It's not.
Yeah, you just mentioned the names of the ones that are upcoming. We'll tell you when you hit the right one.
Yeah.
Okay.
What we're talking about.
They've got
Jaws.
code names. I think it's food now. the A chapter was like apricot, and then B was like bacon.
Yeah.
C was code words. Now we're up to,
Man,
I don't know, like
code names.
Something. I'm always super confused. People are like, "Oh, are you excited for the brownie chapter?" And like, what the? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I can't say anything about this, obviously, but I'm so impressed by what we're able to do now. Things that we talked about like 6-7 years ago that would be completely ridiculous that we're gonna do now. That
the power switching is just
that's really cool.
Like for Dracula from Castlevania and Vecna from Dungeons and Dragons, like it's just a whole new world.
Yeah, and being able to that's it, right? Killers that can be more versatile and have different ways to play is yeah. No, but the next one is, it's not that, but it's really gonna be. hopefully it's gonna impress, because I mean, I'm very impressed when I see what we've done. Yeah, it's
interesting.
I think it's gonna like, some people are gonna bitch like as usual, but it's gonna create some really interesting conversation for sure.
Huh. All right.
Yeah. Let's talk about this again next year.
Okay. We talk about
Fair enough.
We'll want to talk about this one next.
how we feel about it a year from now.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if I could segue into some more
Sure.
value added stuff that isn't necessarily measurable.
Yeah.
How would you feel, or have you had a discussion about going back and adding voice lines to existing characters? So we have Sable, who says quite a little bit in the lobby, but her bestie, Michaela, not so much. Right?
Yeah. That's a tough one. Because again, you're absolutely right. The one of the variables in the equation is the fact that it's difficult to quantify how much money this is going to bring in.
Presumably, most of the community would already own these characters, and you'd be paying voice actors to do lines and maybe not really see the benefit of it, back.
But the benefit is, because even if it's on free characters, let's say we do Jake and Dwight, and we give them lines in the lobby. Like, obviously nobody buys Dwight. He's free. You just have Dwight. So how does that work? It still adds value, I think. But
yeah, it just isn't measurable and like, look how much money we made off of it. Right? But the value is there. Remember when they changed the animations of working on the generators where you're like sparking the wires and pulling this instead of just that was added value, right? People were freaking out when those animations got updated.
But that's the other thing, right? Is there's always the question of, like, there's so much, like, there's oftentimes they call it like tech debt over the years, like things that programmers go, oh, I'll fix it later, right? Because we don't have time right now. Oh, this could have been done so much better. And then later on, you're like, oh shit, we could do it if only we had done the first thing right. But that's inevitable. That's part of development, right? Because hindsight, you never know what the hell you're going to be using that thing for in 5 years. But what I'm going to get at is like, when, like, we've done that with the graphical update. I don't remember what we called it at the time.
Realm Beyond?
Yeah, Realm Beyond.
Thank you.
Will you have another pass through for that necessary because of Unreal Engine 5 or not necessarily?
It's not a necessity, but it's clearly interesting. But that's it, right? We did a big thing where, like, that game is showing its age. Maybe we could put a concerted effort, because you can't do it piecemeal, I think, or at least it's very difficult to justify putting that in the roadmap, putting that in people's tasks, saying, you know what, this next chapter, we're going to take one of the sound designers and make him work on Dwight instead of the next chapter. Like, it just means that we have less bandwidth for the next chapter, so there's not going to be as much.
Right.
But at least Dwight's going to get lines. And that's very, very hard to justify internally. It's much easier, not easy, but it's much easier to say, okay, we're going to do all the survivors that don't have voice line. That's 27 of them. And then we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And that's a full team of 20 people that we'll put on the side for 6 months. Just that. And then you end up with something like the Realm Beyond, right? And then we can make noise about it. Say it's not just like, oh, we're posting on Twitter that Dwight has a voice now. Although if it was Dwight, we might get a chance of getting people's attention, big. But it's much easier if we say we've done a huge pass of upgrades, quality of life, and fixing things.
Gotcha.
And the lighting and different things, whatnot. So that's more likely.
It does sound like a huge endeavor when you think about just how
Going
many
through.
characters would be necessary. Like, we haven't even gotten through all of the original killers getting unique chase music.
That's it. Like, these things didn't exist.
Fair enough. Alrighty.
Would you consider, however, sorry, King.
No, go ahead.
Hiring Roger Jackson to do voice changer lines for Ghostface?
That's tough. Because for many reasons I won't get into. This one I can't talk about.
Okay. Because I think what game did he recently appear in now? I think it's Fun World owned, and Roger Jackson did voice lines for that. So I don't believe Roger Jackson is exclusive to Scream.
Yeah, but that's it. Scream does not appear in Dead by Daylight.
Right. So, but if the Fun World version of Ghostface is in another game, voiced by Roger Jackson,
yeah,
the voice changer is
maybe
universal with even the MTV version of Ghostface had Roger Jackson, I believe.
I don't know.
The voice changer.
But to be fair, in Dead by Daylight, it's not the same character.
That's true.
It's a completely different character. So, would that make sense that he has the exact same voice?
Well, the voice changer is the voice changer no matter who's holding it. So you just have to make Danny Johnson be interested in the voice changer.
Yeah.
And you could pay for it with Amori, where he uses the voice line.
You have this all set up.
People buy the Mori. There you go.
Well, the thing is,
these ideas are free. Go, write it down.
Because you mentioned it, because I could get in trouble if we actually did it, because then you can come back to us saying these are my ideas.
Uh-oh. We never did it.
None of it is usable anymore.
Damn it.
You poisoned the well.
Oh my God. Cut this part out, King. Everybody's going to hate me now.
It's all your fault, Polly. Wump to the wump.
That's not how it works, but almost. Like people who send...
Oh yeah, I've seen it.
With gameplay design, like not opening it, right? We cannot legally open it because our lawyer is going to say, you're a fucking idiot. Like, don't.
I've seen people say, Behavior stole my idea from 5 years ago on Reddit. And I'm like, oh. No. Nobody can ever have the same idea, right?
No.
Oh, man.
I had a very interesting legal book. So when I started doing legal, my legal department gave me a book to read. I'm like, this might help. Like specifically law in video games. And it's someone that's been in video games forever that wrote that. Super interesting guy. And the first line is like, your design ideas are shitty.
Damn.
Nobody gives a shit about your design idea. You have an idea for a game, great. Everybody has ideas for a game. The important thing is execution. And he's 98% right? A great idea for a game, it doesn't mean shit. Great execution on an idea, that is what makes or breaks a game.
It's a good point. Good. Mathieu Cote has been handing out some great advice today, I must say. I've been taking a lot of notes there. Especially legal advice, it seems. Get into law again. All right. I think that's going to segue us to our final question of this part. And then we'll have the community section with a bunch of random questions from the community. Anything else that's been spicy that we left out from the beginning. But I think it'll be a good note. I mean, like I said, you're always living in the future. You're always looking at things to... Buffy! Aw. I like Buffy. I always like seeing all the animals on Instagram. I always scrolling through and seeing them. Where was I? Yeah. You're always living in the future. You're always looking at things coming into the game. You're probably 3 years ahead from now. Jaws, Jason, everyone's coming in. But for you, how do you envision the future of Dead by Daylight? Because it's been crazy. Like when I picked up this game in 2016, I'm sure you guys as well, you never could have imagined where you'd be today. But now, you're a little bit in the future realm, maybe a year, maybe 2 years ahead. Who knows? How do you see the future of DBD going?
It's so tricky, right, to answer this question. Because especially because it's such a generic question. It's a great question, but it's such like it cannot be answered except in very general terms. And that's usually where I hide to answer the question in very general terms. And so right now I cannot tell you like even the smallest thing I feel is an absolute pitfall, which is a shame because I would love to talk about how I envision the game. Right? I think that I'll say the smallest things I can say. I think that there's going to be a couple of really interesting surprises in what we've done, and as far as collaborations go, I think that the foundation of the game is also going to see some much needed love.
Ooh.
If I have my way, Dead by Daylight will also be present in more shapes. You've seen Hooked on You, you've seen things like I keep talking about the board game, comic book. There are other things. There are other ways to inject that Dead by Daylight stuff into your veins, and we're going to give you some good ones. But not just that, but I love seeing how people use different mediums to tell stories. And I think that Dead by Daylight is a great canvas for stories to be told. And I want people to use different mediums to tell the Dead by Daylight story. We've announced a little while ago that Blumhouse and Atomic Monster are creating a movie. I would love to go see that movie one day. Be nice.
Are you inviting us
soon?
Yeah, if I can. Sure, let's do that. Like
that would be nice.
We should have asked him if we can have parts in the movie.
That would be good
if that happens. I don't think so. They haven't asked.
Last I heard, there was no script and no director.
You asked who? Me?
Well, I mean, Mikey Bones, from Slasher Radio, one of his, when he had talked to somebody, and that was the last that I heard about that.
Okay.
How often do they keep in touch with you? Is it like you signed off and go do it, or they give you regular updates? Or
we are in very close contact with the host of Blumhouse. There's a guy there. His name's Ryan Turek, been the head of movies at Blumhouse for a few years, 5-6 years at least, because we used to talk to Blumhouse, let's say 6 years ago, for potentially making a TV show. That didn't really pan out at the time. But I wasn't talking to him because he's movies, but I was talking to him because I was at Blumhouse, I was talking to people, and that guy is a huge Dead by Daylight fan, loves the game, he knows everything about horror.
Maybe that was who Mikey interviewed.
I think that's the guy that he talked to. But so things have changed since then. But we're in very, very close contact with Blumhouse, and it's not just because we want to be present every step of the way and make sure that this ends up being an amazing Dead by Daylight experience. It's also because they believe that it can't be a great Dead by Daylight movie if we're not involved. So there.
I mean, I'd say they have a pretty good track record for converting properties. So
they're amazing.
Great job. And Atomic Monster with James Wan, I mean, he's one of the masters of cinema nowadays, for sure, no matter how you cut it.
I remember I went down the list one day and I just watched every Blumhouse movie because I'm like, they're just amazing. I love it. So I'm looking forward to that. Maybe we'll get invited to the premiere, Polly. We'll keep our fingers crossed.
Maybe we
Mathieu
can get
Cote
some
+1 +1
Daylight too. Have a little bit of crossover there. It's got to make those conversations easier, I would think.
Yeah. We give you movie, give some characters.
One would think. All right.
Alrighty.
What else you got?
I got quite a few, but they're kind of just all miscellaneous. So I think we can turn this part off of the interview for now. And for those watching on YouTube, next week 1 week from my birthday, when this is going up, you will see the part 2 where we answer some of the community questions. By we, I mean Matthew. He will be answering some of your community questions. So I think we're gonna.
If time has passed,
Yeah, we'll change. We'll toss on some new clothes. Probably look at the Jaws mask back. Oh man.
It's always Dead by Daylight. No matter what I wear, it's always fucking Dead by Daylight. That's all I know.
Alrighty though. But if you're watching on YouTube, thank you guys so much for the love and support. Mathieu Cote, we're going to go off air for like 2 seconds. He's going to tell us all the different chapters that are coming out, and we're going to then ask him some questions. Then we'll give you guys a part 2. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoy. As always, I'm the king. Tip my crown to you guys, and we'll see you in the fog.
Goodbye.